The legend of Sleepy Hollow is based on another German legend, but this legend, because of Irving, has become American as well because he popularized it through this story. The very legend is based on the figure of a headless horseman, and he is a ghost, a soldier, who guards the entrance to the forest in Sleepy Hollow, which is a valley located at the eastern part of the Hudson River. And this horseman chases all the intruders from this forest. So similarly to Rip Van Winkle, here we also have this image of the Shakespearean green world because forest is seen as the place of the imaginary and of the unknown, something to be scared of, and the main character of the tale is going to experience this in a very frightening way. But although the legend of Sleepy Hollow, the tale, is based on the Headless Horseman, the true star of the story is not the Headless Horseman, but the main character, Ichabod Crane. Ichabod Crane is such an interesting figure to talk about because he's very specific in his appearance and in his manners. I'm not going to speak a lot about Ichabod right now in this video because we are going to read the story in class in a couple of days. But just let me briefly mention this to you about other characters. So Ichabod Crane is a teacher. He is an outsider because he comes to this valley as a new character and he introduces what is usually called in literature novum. Novum is a very significant motif for you to know because I believe in every story, in every novel, in every play, somebody has to introduce the novum. If you think about it, there is always a character to whom everything that he or she speaks about is completely new, so that he can relate these things to us as readers, because all these things are new to us, of course, because we are reading the story for the first time. Here, the function is served by Ichabod Crane, who in his own very odd ways gets through many misadventures throughout the story. One of his misadventures is, of course, meeting a woman, and this is the beautiful Katrina of the Van Tassel family. For example, there is an episode where Crane is called to spend the evening at the Van Tassels, where there is food, there is drink, and Ichabod Crane, although he is extremely thin, he likes to eat a lot, and he's literally described as having a devouring mind's eye. His principal rival for Katrina's love is his main antagonist, Brom Bones, who is the opposite of Ichabod Crane. He's handsome, he's well built, and of course, the story features the Headless Horseman, or at least somebody who poses as the Headless Horseman, whom Ichabod is going to encounter at the end of the story. We will speak in class about the end result of this story, because Ichabod he vanishes without trace, never to be found. So he does not return to the community like Rip Van Winkle, for example. And this would be the main difference between the stories and between the principal characters, Rip and Ichabod. So the community here, because it does not accept Ichabod Crane back, represents another antagonist in the story, unlike in Rip Van Winkle, where the community accepts Rip back, even though he hasn't been there for 20 years. Of course, we can, in a way, justify the actions of both Brom Bones and the community, because Ichabod Crane is described as selfish and arrogant and self-absorbed. He is a humorous character with many, many flaws. And this is why Irving uses Ichabod Crane as a scapegoat and as a symbol of an American intellectual who has to be an outsider and an outcast from the new American society. Like in my previous video, I'm going to show you here one example from the story itself so that you can guess what you will encounter in class itself. So here is the excerpt, which comes from the story, and let us try and read the excerpt together. Here it is. In the porkers, he saw carved out the future sleek side of bacon and juicy, relishing ham. Not a turkey, but he beheld daintily trussed up, with its gizzard under its wing, and, peradventure, a necklace of savoury sausages. And even bright Chanticleer himself lay sprawling on his back in a side dish with uplifted claws, as if craving that quarter which his chivalrous spirit disdained to ask while living. In my opinion, this is one of the most humorous parts of the story because it happens once Ichabod Crane approaches the Van Tassel's yard and their family, because, as I said, he's invited to spend the evening there. And if you just look at the words which I highlighted, because I think they could probably be difficult for you to understand in this context, you now can certainly see how difficult it is to actually understand the meaning of Irving's sentences. But the good news is that once you understand this sentence, for example, you will find Irving enjoyable to read because you will hopefully laugh at everything that is said here. Let me give you just a small hint. So Ichabod Crane approaches the yard and he sees all these animals on the Van Tassel's farm. And being so hungry all the time, he starts imagining all these animals that are running around the yard as already served and prepared dishes for eating. So if he saw a pig, the pig in his mind will already be roasted with an apple in its mouth, and so on and so forth. So we will try in class to definitely read this very closely. We will not have enough time to read the whole story. I will leave that up to you after class, of course, but I will single out those passages that I think are challenging for you and interesting for you to deconstruct and to closely read. So now let me try to just compare and contrast the two stories, Rip Van Winkle and the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Of course, the two tales are completely different, but they can be compared because they do have some common elements, especially if we discuss these stories in terms of the rites of passage. Joseph Campbell described the rite of passage as something, I will show you that in another slide, sorry, as something which consists of three phases: separation, initiation, and return. Ritual prelaska bi to bilo recimo na srpskom jeziku i postoje određeni događaji u životu čoveka koji se računaju kao rites of passage, kao što na primjer krštenje, dobijanje prvog ciklusa posle žena, zatim ženidba ili udadba, recimo, ili najbolje bi bilo što se književnosti tiče da ovo kažem, a to je quest. The quest of a hero. Dakle, svaka potraga na kojoj se bazira svako književno delo mora da se sastoji iz ove tri faze. I zbog toga ću vam ja ostaviti takođe jedan kratak animirani video o ovim fazama, da vidite kako to funkcioniše zaista u književnosti. Sjajno je video urađen, nadam se da ćete uživati u njemu i traje samo nekoliko minuta. In the rite of passage, which is described in both stories, we have Rip and we have Ichabod. Both are marginal to society. Rip is simply a very lazy man who lives at Catskill Mountains. And they are different from the rest of the community because they have their own specific traits. But because they are different, we know that they're going to have a fate which is magnificent and exceptional. And this is what all the stories in the world are based on. If you have these characters that are exceptional, then your story is going to be exceptional as well. So let me just go back and speak a bit about the symbolic meaning of Rip's sleep. The first one that I singled out here is a rejection of the capitalistic values. Remember that at the beginning of the story, America was still part of the British Empire, and the evil and nagging Dame Van Winkle is a symbol of capitalism and a symbol of the British Empire. Whereas Rip, he is lazy because he does not know what else to do, and he represents America before the American Revolution. On the other hand, we have Ichabod Crane, who is described as an outcast, and he represents all the artists and intellectuals in America. He can be a symbol for that. But at the same time, he is ridiculed because of his specific traits, and he is said to be a caricature of the scheming Yankee Puritan. So even though he represents artists, he does not show all the positive values of art in America at that time. He is much more ridiculed than he is praised in The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Of course, in The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, I said that the community is hypocritical because once Ichabod Crane disappears, nobody speaks of him anymore because they don't care what happened to Ichabod. This is why the community in Sleepy Hollow is an antagonist, whereas in Rip Van Winkle, it can be seen as a positive character. So if the rite of passage consists of separation, initiation, and return, let's see how this fits into both stories. Dakle, odvajanje, separation je kada lik iz neke početne situacije negde ode. U slučaju Šekspirovih komedija, kao što sam pomenula, likovi iz korumpiranih društava odlaze u šumu kako bi se izlečili, to bi bila separation phase of a rite of passage. Kod Ripa je to odlazak u šumu, a kod Ichaboda Crane'a bi bio dolazak u The Sleepy Hollow. Then you have initiation, kod Ripa bi to bilo kada sretne one figure i kada pije njihovo piće, a kod Ichaboda Crane'a bi bio sam susret sa The Headless Horseman. Treća faza, koja je u stvari najbitnija u svakoj priči, jeste the return phase, because a story ends with the return of the hero. In Rip Van Winkle, you have a positive outcome for Rip, whereas you have a completely negative outcome for Ichabod Crane. He never comes back. There is no return phase for Ichabod Crane. And this is why The Legend of Sleepy Hollow tends to be seen as a much crueler version of the legend that Irving took as his inspiration. So we'll speak about that a bit more in class. Let me just end this video today with this riddle. Of course, I'm going to tell you who wrote this. Let me just read it. Irving is much overrated, and a nice distinction might be drawn between his just and his surreptitious and adventitious reputation. Surreptitious means nešto što je kradomice, a ova druga reč adventitious znači nešto što on iskorišćava. This was, of course, said by Edgar Allan Poe. I hope at least some of you have guessed it. That if you remember, Edgar Allan Poe spoke unfavorably about Longfellow, calling him a plagiarist and saying that he stole many things from Tennyson, which is not true, of course. And as for Irving, Edgar Allan Poe approached Irving to read his stories. One of them was The Fall of the House of Usher. One of our stories to read, and Irving spoke favorably of these stories, but later on Poe suddenly changed his views of Irving and started criticizing him so as to boost his own career, and this is why he says that Irving is much overrated. So just think about it, and we will connect all these things once we come to Edgar Allan Poe. See you soon in a couple of days. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope that you will enjoy Irving's stories both with Atza and with me. Bye!